much for coming today and spending your evening with us here. It's 7:15, so we'll get started, and late people can come in slowly as they trickle in. So just before we start, the bathrooms are out there towards your left. The moment you start walking, you'll see the sign for restrooms. We'll have a couple of speakers, and then dinner will be served at 7:30, and then we'll also have a couple of speakers after that. So tonight's presentation is sponsored by Global Financial Consultants. It's their first educational series for financial services and people working in the financial services industry. And tonight we'll veer into the topic of the future of financial advice. So tonight, Global Financial Consultants have invited a number of leading speakers in their field to come and share some of their knowledge and insights into this exciting realm of what we call the future and what it can look like for people in the financial services industry and what we can do about it. So the very first speaker, or two speakers we have, are from Global Financial Consultants. We have Bruce Barron and Jarrad Brown, who will speak about how financial services industry has evolved over the years and how advisory firms can adapt to remain competitive to cater for clients' changing needs. So the first speaker, Bruce Barron, is the CEO and co-founder of Global Financial Consultants, one of the most venerable and longest established wealth management and financial advisory firms in Singapore. Global Financial Consultants was established in Sydney in Australia in 1997 and relocated to Singapore in 2003. With over 20 years experience as a financial advisory firm in Singapore, GFC prides itself on their team of diverse and knowledgeable advisors who are equipped to work with local clients as well as handling the complex financial needs of expatriate clients who have come from across the globe to live and work in Singapore. And following Bruce is Jarrad Brown, who is a senior financial planner and shareholder at Global Financial Consultants. He has a strong focusing on the Australian expatriate clients and their financial needs. Jarrad is originally from Perth, Western Australia, and moved to Singapore in 2013. He has, you might not notice this when he comes up, but he has over 15 years experience working in the finance industry and is a passionate supporter of the community, having been awarded the Rotary International Paul Harris Fellow, as well as the Citizen of the Year Award in Western Australia. Aside from the required qualifications for financial advisory in Singapore, Jarrad graduated from Curtin University with first-class honours in economics and finance, holds a number of finance-related diplomas and certificates with Kaplan, and is currently completing an MBA at the University in Washington. So let's put our hands together and welcome Bruce and Jarrad.
Good evening. Everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thanks for that, Linda. Jarrad has wheeled me out tonight to say a few words on how the FA industry has changed over the years. And I've been working in the business now for 30 years or more. Started out in London and moved to KL back in the early 90s. And before setting up GFC in the last century, which was 1997 actually, we set up the business in Sydney originally and then moved to Singapore. Has the industry improved since those early days? Most certainly, and obviously for the better. Back in those halcyon days, to sign up a client, all we needed was an application form and a passport. So there was no reams of paperwork that you get nowadays, and various departments have been set up now for every company, I think, with compliance, power planning, IT, marketing, analytics, investment strategy, admin support. It's all there these days. So the quality of advisors has also improved over the years. Most are far more qualified, professional, knowledgeable than the days of yore. Good advisors are essential for a business to maintain clients and grow their books. Attitudes to the clients have vastly improved over the years, both from the company perspective and the advisor. The hardcore sales of a lot of companies of the yesteryear are a thing of the past in licensed jurisdictions such as Singapore. The focus now is ensuring that the client receives pertinent advice and is serviced appropriately and regularly. Attitudes to advisors over the years from companies have changed. Retention is important and vital. It's important for most advisors to have a clear pathway of their own retirement plan, exit strategy, and are comfortable with the philosophy of the business they're working in. At GFC over the years, we've adapted and implementing new technology, improving regulatory requirements in line with MAS imposed regulations, encouraging our younger advisors to buy in as shareholders to ensure the longevity of the business. We believe that it would benefit the FA industry here in Singapore to collaborate more, to encourage, educate and put pressure on the MAS and the MOM to have more understanding of the business, the structure as regulations to the FA industry to make it more effective in its product offering and an easing of hiring essential staff. Technology obviously has improved massively over the years since I first started out with my little phone and a computer that barely worked. Obviously social media have made massive advances from those early days. And to talk about these changes, because I have no idea about all this technology stuff, I'm going to hand over to my younger colleague, Jarrad, to talk about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Look, before I sort of touch on the technology side, just to really, I guess, show our appreciation for everyone tonight. This is our first event as a collaborative event in the financial services industry. One of my biggest pet peeves, and certainly in our firm, is there is not enough sharing of ideas within our industry. Everyone's at loggerheads. You think, we tend to think a client that somebody gets is a client that we lost. Singapore is such an underserviced market and such a wonderful opportunity for all of us to be working in. Certainly as someone from Perth, who's a little bit older than I've perhaps been presented to be this evening, it's a fantastic place to be and a fantastic market to serve. So just first and foremost, a bit of a round of applause for everyone who's come along tonight. Now, obviously, as part of these events, we really want to showcase what's happening in the industry, what are we doing, what are new tools to explore, to consider adopting, how is GFC adapting new technology, bringing it into our service offering. I think over the last 2.5 years, we have seen a huge demand for technology. Nobody wants to wear pants anymore. Everybody wants to meet on Zoom. Nobody wants to leave their house. Everybody wants everything online, on their mobile phone, instantly, and if it's not coming in the next half an hour, it's too slow. And this has led to two things happening. One has been the technology has improved a lot, and we've seen that in the share prices of a lot of these companies. Zoom is a pretty good example. But we've also seen this in the demands amongst our clients. Even within our existing client group at the moment, I'm probably sitting at about 5% of my clients want to meet face-to-face. And why? Because if they don't need to come and see me at Raffles Place, they don't need to leave the house. They can stick to their board shorts. All my clients are Australians, so they're in board shorts and a singlet, probably having a beer. They're relaxed, they're chilled out. They don't, perhaps, they don't want to come into the office, so we need to be adopting these new technologies. But which ones? And this is the problem. There are so many, And as an industry, we don't really have this collaborative body to work out which ones are best. So I just want to share with you a little bit, if we can go to the next slide, some of the things that we are utilising at the moment. We've spent a lot of time over the last 2-3 years. I've spent a lot of time online trying to figure out new ideas, how do we share strategies, tips, ideas, insights with our clients. And these are just some of the things that we're utilising. And this is not to showcase how great we are, despite, obviously, I think we are pretty wonderful. But these are just things that you might want to think about in your own day-to-day life, in the way that you go about your business. We've got things like Otter.ai, voice-to-text file notes. Who hates typing file notes? What a pain in the backside that is. And if ever you're sued, which as advisors, we all need to consider that risk, that's a big one. And Otter actually works. Calendly, simple stuff, links to your Outlook. You can book meetings, you send the client the link, they can book their own meeting, they can reschedule if they want to, they do it all online. Gone are the days of, does 4 p.m. on Thursday work for you? Oh no, what about 4:30? What about next Tuesday? No more. Here's the link, book it yourself. All this stuff, Active Campaign, email newsletters, Morningstar Advisor Research Centre, run your model portfolios through this stuff and you can produce historical returns. How did you perform over the last 10 years? There it is. Zapier, everything links together. What a wonderful world we now live in. All of this stuff, obviously Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, we know all of this stuff. This is not anything sexy or exciting. We do a lot of video updates for our clients now. We want to launch into more audio updates for our clients because what we're finding is that video started to become very popular, but then they started listening to it on the train and at the gym and in the taxi, and they don't want to watch it anymore. They want to listen to it. And this is the stuff we need to do. There's a lot up there. You're welcome to take a photo. It's not rocket science. None of these companies or businesses are secrets. I'm sure you've heard of lots of them. These are just some of the ways that we as GFC want to be adopting new technology to ensure that we're relevant and stay in touch with our clients all the time. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of our speakers tonight.
Now, as your entrees are coming out, I'd like to introduce to you the next speaker, Vivek Iyyani. So Vivek is a professional speaker at Millennial Minds. He is the author of the book Engaging Millennials and has spoken at organisations like Oracle, Julius Baer, Schroders, New Skin Enterprise, Great Eastern and Booking.com. He has been featured by the National Population and Talent Division under the Prime Minister's Office in video of My Singapore Story. He has appeared on Channel News Asia as a guest expert on the millennial topic a number of times, and he is not in the industry to speak around the globe in conferences and events on how to recruit, reward and retain millennials at work. So let's give a big warm welcome to Vivek.
Good evening. Let's try that again. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
All right. Okay, great. This comes off. So, today we are here to talk about, or at least I am here to talk about how you can have multiple approaches, especially intergenerational approaches when it comes to reaching out to clients, right? The emergence of the millennial topic is specifically what I'm going to be talking about. So before I even actually share something, I would like all of you, if you could just entertain me, to take out your phones and open up the notes. Okay, open up the notes app. The notes, right? so that you can just write down the score. So we're going to do a little quiz, a short quiz, just 10 questions to see if you understand the words that I'm going to be displaying on the screen. Okay? Now, the rule to this quiz is you cannot ask anyone else for the answers. And don't peek at the other person. Alright? Okay? Shall we do this? Ready? Phones out. Note app. Ready? Let's go. You have about 10 seconds to write down the meaning. If you know the meaning, give yourself a 1. If you don't know what the word means or how to use it in a sentence, put a 0. Okay? It's a 1 or a 0. Alright? Ready? Let's go. You know what it means? Okay. Good. Right? You don't have to say the answer. I just need you to write 1 or 0 in your notes. Right? No, don't Google. Yes. Here's the next one. All right. No, not the food, salty. Right? I know if you're thinking about this is no, that's a 0. Yeah. Okay. What about this one? It's going to get harder from here. I'm looking to the Gen Zs. Okay? So if you got it, put a 1. If you didn't get it, put a 0. What about this one? It's not the funeral dead kind of stuff. Okay? What about this one? Do you know what it means? And how do you use it in a sentence? You probably shouldn't use it in a sentence, right? But yeah. Okay? What about this? It's not what you're going to eat today, but if you're a soccer fan, you probably know what this means. Okay? Great. I see a lot of nodding heads, so I'm hopeful. What about this one? Right? If you know it, put a 1. If you don't know what it is, put a 0. What about this one? That's actually a phrase. No? No clue? Okay, great. Let's move on. It gets harder, right? This is like probably the harder ones. It's like a sentence, almost. No. No, it's not rude as well. But it's definitely used when you're texting, right? Definitely millennials. And on social media, you'll see this as well. And this is probably the last one. It's an I, it's not an L, it's an I, okay? Alright, so tabulate your scores. And let's see how many we have on average across the 4 tables. Okay? Yeah. Who's the highest scorer? Find out the highest scorer on your table. Okay, average is 3. Who's the highest scorer here? Who's got a 4 here? Okay, you've got a 4. What about table number 1? Ah, yes, of course. 8. Okay, what about there? Highest score? 8. Who's got the 8? Okay. 9. Alright, great. And over there, table number 3? 8 or 9? Okay. Who's got a 0? Put up your hands. 0. Anyone got a 0? Oh, that's good. That's good. Alright. So, you probably understand from this exercise that all of these words are pretty new to you. So, let's quickly go through them, right? YOLO means you only live once. It's an attitude. You only live once, so I'm going to do something unconventional, right? Salty. I didn't feel good about that. I think he's salty, right? I think he's not in a good mood. TLDR. Too long, didn't read. Too long. Your email is too long. Didn't read. Did. Oh, that was so funny. I died. Did. Right? Okay, boomer. So okay, boomer is used when someone who is a baby boomer says something and you don't want to listen to them and you don't want to argue with them. You say, okay, boomer. Right? It's like a retort. Right? Goat. Greatest of all time. There you go. Lit. Right? Lit means basically this entire place, this event is happening, it's lit. NGL? Not gonna lie. Right? Not going to lie. So it's basically, can I be frank? Not gonna lie, the food is good. Right? This is a phrase, if you know what I mean. Right? The aircon was so cold. Did you feel it? If you know what I mean? Right? Maybe it's an inside joke as well, if you know what I mean. And the last one is, if you know, you know. Millennials love traveling. If you know, you know. Okay? Yeah, it's global. Yeah, pretty much global, right? I'm sure there's more Singlish as well. That's more local as well. Okay? So I just wanted to do this fun exercise to help you guys understand that, the younger generation have a very different way of approaching things. They've created a language of their own. They have a different way of messaging people. They basically are a little different. The gap has increased thanks to the multiple trends. So Jarrad talked about technology. And technology is when the millennials grew up. They grew up with a computer in their house. They grew up realizing that there's an online medium where I can connect with a friend and interact with them, plus an offline medium as well. Yeah, probably. Right? Unless we make it cool again. Right. So if you're wondering which generation you are in, you can take a look here. Right? So we have the millennials who are the 1981 to 1995. And this is who we are going to be talking about today. Okay? Right? So the demographic influence is huge for the millennial generation because they, by 2025, are going to be 75% of the global workforce. Right? So what this means is that they are going to be the ones with the highest disposable income. So if you want to be in front of the millennials, right, you really need to understand what drives them and what makes them tick. Right? Now what's even more interesting is when we do a visual map about where the millennials are concentrated. They're concentrated in Asia. We have actually 1.8 billion just in Asia. So when you think about the opportunities it arises for those of you who are targeting millennials, it's huge, right? And 58%, right, is fully focused and here in Asia. So they also have an economic influence. The economic influence basically means that now that they are working, the entire generation has started working and they have started settling down, even though a bit slower than usual, right? They are the ones who you need to start targeting and focusing on. If not, you're going to be losing out. So here are some stats, right? So few things you want to know, right? In Asia Pacific, millennials, some of them are not really leaving the nest. Some of them are, right? So 63%, still very cozy with family, right? Not really settling down as quickly, so more of a generation rent, right? Job loyalty is higher than perceived, okay? We have, like what Jarrad said, not wanting to go back to the office, right? Wanting to work from home, right? Office design matters, right? Not the cubicles anymore, but more of the open concept, right? They like to focus on wellness. I want a mental health day if I'm feeling stressed out, all right? We have all of these interesting characteristics that has been talked about this generation that it is important for you to know, right? Now, what made millennials like this and why you should focus on them is because helicopter parenting has been something that's been talked about when you talk about the millennials. Millennials have had parents who are much kinder to them, much more caring, not as bad as how the baby boomers had it, right? Because baby boomers had parents who lived through the World War, all right? And then they decided that they don't want to have the same kind of treatment for their children, so they really protected them from young, right? From young, they basically said, I'm here to support you in your dreams. So this is what we call a helicopter parent, always there to rescue. Now we would think that this is only until the child grows up, but the research says that parents are still supporting millennials even though they have a family and they've settled down, right? We are seeing that millennial parents want to have more kids, and the boomers are the ones who are actually saying, hey, we are helping you, we don't mind supporting you because you are our child, right? So we are seeing this trend of how the older generation is still taking care of the younger generation because they are not fully there yet. Okay, so this is where we talk about the great wealth transfer. So as the baby boomers age, right, they have accumulated a source of wealth, and this source of wealth is going to be what they are going to be giving to the millennials when they pass on as inheritance. So if you're not in front of the millennials, right, and you discount them as someone who would be a potential client, you're losing out. In fact, I was just talking to Deepak today, and he just mentioned that he met a 16-year-old person who requested an appointment with him. And it's like, 16-year-old, why? What's the intention behind this meeting? And she actually shared that I have some savings that I want to, really invest. So how much are you looking at? She said it's a piggy bank. So how much do you have in a piggy bank? I have 100,000.
What?
100,000 at 16 years old. What were you doing when you were 16 years old? So the trends have changed. Her parents have helped her to save. Her grandparents have given her enough money, and she has been saving it all this while so that she can invest it, and she knows how she wants to invest it, because in 4 years' time, I am going to be going to college, and I'm going to be needing more than what I have right now. So she is coming up with a plan. So the millennials, the Gen Zs, a lot more educated about finance, and they just need the direction. And you guys have to be the one guiding them and focusing on them, because they also have a very long runway. So the question is, are you going to be leaving money on the table because you're not focused on this group, right? If you don't focus on them, the day that they have the money, they will go to the person who has always been nurturing them since day one. The one who's always been there to guide them, advise them, and build a relationship with them. It doesn't have to be in person. It could be just through social media, email marketing, different omnipresence that you need to create. Okay, so we definitely know that they are much more educated. In fact, we call them the woke generation because they're a little bit more focused on what do I really need. In fact, the Gen Zs are even questioning, do I really need to go to college to make money, or are there alternatives? When I go to schools and ask students, what do you want to be? I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a podcaster. I want to be an influencer. So the way they think is essentially changing about education as well, right? So how do I support myself without incurring the kind of expenses that we have? All right? So this is the question I want you to think about. Right? When the millennials have a pot of gold, will they be thinking about you? Have you been appearing in front of them enough times? And will they trust you with their pot of gold? So this is where understanding the millennial mindset comes in. You need to know what motivates them, what engages them, why they join certain companies and agencies, why they stay in certain companies and agencies, what are the issues they go through, what is quarter life crisis. All of these things you have to understand. Okay? So what do they need from you? What do you need to do? You need to be transparent. You need to educate them. You can educate them in whatever form or manner. Previously, it used to be one-to-one personalized education. Now, that's no longer an excuse. Now you can educate them through multiple mediums. Blogs, YouTube videos, articles, LinkedIn, social media. All of these are forms for you to educate. And you shouldn't just educate the people who are keen to invest. You should also educate the people who haven't even thought of investing. That's how you become a thought leader, and that's how you start to grow your followers as well. So just take a look at what millennials are saying about how they make purchases. Peer reviews. If you've ever wanted to buy something last time, you would go down to the shop, window shop. You go to all the different shops in the different floors in the malls, and then you compare and you buy. Now they don't even do that. They go look for a blog that has all of that put out into a pricing table, and they compare all of those things, and then they make a decision and buy online. They don't even step out of the house. And even before they buy the product, they look at all the reviews. So if you're traveling to a hotel, you look at the reviews. If you're buying a product, you look at the reviews. If you're buying from Carousel, you look at the reviews before you actually trust the seller. Right? They don't mind sharing their personal information as long as you're value adding to them. So the question you need to have is, how can I value add to them so that I can solve the basic problems on the end? And the basic problem is, how do I even start the journey with money? How do I even begin? Where should I begin? Okay? And you have to understand that the eyeballs are no longer as much offline as much as it is online. Right? Just within yourselves, when you have that moment where you're waiting for the next food to come, you will look at your phone, not at the newspaper. Right? And that's why it's important for you to have a presence online when they are looking for someone for help. Right? So my peers and I adopt new technologies, right, much faster than the older generations because they know it is efficient. So like what Jarrad showed, right, all those different icons, probably you recognize some of them, but not all of them. That means you have some work to do. Right? We have to start keeping up and staying relevant. If we don't, we are the ones who stand to lose out. Right? It's about being in front of people and sharing. Sharing not because you want to boast, but sharing because you have an intention to educate others so that they don't make the same mistakes that you make. That's how you win over people without even meeting them in person. Okay? So some interesting statistics, 47% of millennials are likely to purchase through Pinterest just by seeing pictures. Right? A lot of my friends buy saris by looking at Pinterest, right? Not by going to the shop in Little India, right? I have friends who say that Facebook is also where they give reviews of purchases that they have made, whether they liked it or they didn't like it. They go to Facebook. If they are unhappy with some service, they tag the page on Facebook because that's how they get to interact. They don't go down to the general manager and complain anymore, right? And 1/3 of millennials are likely to purchase via Twitter as well. Right? I think that's more for the West. So, this is what I have to say. Right? You are who Google says you are. You need to appear when someone searches for something that's related to finance. Right? And what are those questions that millennials have when it comes to finance? You have to find that out, and you have to give those answers to them. Okay, so 3 steps: know their mindset, what motivates them, be visible where they spend time, and lastly, speak their lingo and build rapport with them. When you do these 3 things, you will be able to take your first step and embark on the journey to engaging millennials. If you'd like to learn more, you can always read the book that I have over there, browse through, and you learn a lot more about what it takes to be engaged with millennials. Thank you.
But Vivek's presentation gives us an excellent segue for me to introduce our next speaker, also a very long friend of mine, Benjamin Law. So in Vivek's presentation, he spoke a lot about utilizing digital media, social media and everything, and engaging people before they even consider buying or utilizing your services. and as well as learning about maintaining and building relationships over the long term. So Benjamin is going to speak about the age of digital revolution, how advisors leverage digital marketing and social media to boost their top of mind and personal brand influence for client acquisition. Benjamin is one of the youngest certified professional speakers, CSP, an accolade accorded to the top 12 professional speakers globally. In the life insurance industry, Ben's focus is helping leaders and professionals be top of mind with the audience they serve. He has spoken to and trained over 55,000 professional advisors across 9 different countries across Asia, and also been a keynote speaker at the APAC Life Insurance Congress, as well as the $1 Million Roundtable Days, both in Malaysia and Indonesia. He has advised, consulted, and coached numerous top-performing agency leaders, and is also the advising CMO to a $20 million group and agency in Singapore for a leading Fortune 500 life insurance corporation. His work and insights have been featured on over 70 occasions on platforms like the Huffington Post, Straits Times, Radio, Hong Kong TV, and much more. So, very lucky and honoured to have Benjamin here tonight. Thank you.
All right, I just want to feel the energy in this room. Like, how are you feeling this evening? Good. I was just very, very present to how the whole term of change has really sculpted and shifted. As I was commuting to this place, anyway, I'll be presenting sense slides because I reckon, I'm the man in between now till your dinner. So I'm going to keep things short, sharp, sweet, and tight. Yeah. So I'll just take a more casual approach. I have my staff here today with me, and Val, say hi to everyone. You are a Gen Z, right? You can say hi to her. And the reason why I brought you here was really because my first job out of accounting school, I was into sales. And one of the big things that my boss used to ask me to do was to attend networking events like this. How many of you have been schooled in the old school way of selling? Whatever that means, right? It's all about meeting people, appointments, getting in front of the customers. And I would recall my bosses, I had two bosses both from America, and they would always say, Ben, before you go to an event, always bring your name cards. Like, just as a show of hands, how many of you brought name cards today?
Credit cards.
Oh, credit cards, right? So we have a few OGs here, right? The OGs, as we call this, the original gangster. Is a just to add on one more lexicon from Vivek. The OGs are a very flattering term that we sort of put for people who have been there, done that. And then I realized when I was WhatsApping my staff here, she's a Gen Z today. I say, no, just forget about the whole business cards, because these days what do we use? LinkedIn, and if you're comfortable with LinkedIn, you use the QR code scan. And I think the whole pace of change has been crazy. For the past 2 to 3 years, I've been consulting a Fortune 500 corporation, and I've been very, very blessed to help them at the cusp of change. So they are a UK life insurance firm, and I could recall sometime in May 2020. Do you all recall what were you doing at May 2020? Lockdown in Singapore, circuit breaker. At that time, the client who was based in Hong Kong said, hey, our agents are not prepared for COVID. Right? And you can imagine, because we meet face-to-face, not in board shots. Well, in Singapore, they still meet sometimes in McDonald's, kopitiam, or the hawker centers, as you call it. So they had to mobilize, and they say, hey, how do we get agents to start to think online? How do we get people to be comfortable doing advisory over Zoom? How do we get people to be comfortable with the notion of saying, hey, I want to discuss my very, very sensitive financial matters, not in person, but through a screen and camera. So you could imagine it was really, really challenging. So I was very blessed. May 2020, I was called in. I was training about 22,000 audience across 9 countries for this company called Prudential. So my work around there has been largely with type agencies. You sort of choke on your wine. Are you from Peru? Have you recognized me? Hopefully by now. Okay. So you should tune into your webinars. But okay, we'll come to that when we come to that. Yeah. So I want to say, I think the whole agenda for change is been there, done that. I don't want to sort of add in more rhetoric. I try to make something more obvious, right? So in my little presentation today, I'm going to share with you some perspectives, nothing more than advice, but perspectives in terms of what I helped my clients in the past 2 to 3 years. One of them has attracted a lot of wealth from this country called China. So particularly through the brand that she's constructed, through her brand as well as the influence offline, there's a client who's invested upwards of 8 figures in terms of a single premium, right? A policy, single premium, 8 figures. There's another client of mine, she's a go-to advisor on LinkedIn as well. She has an appointment book totally filled. She used to be a corporate HR leader and she used to net about $250,000 in terms of salary, decided to join Prudential to be a life insurance leader, and we managed to use some of the strategies to get her online. So just as a quick show of hands, right, I want to have a sensing, why are we here today, right? How many of you are here to learn new knowledge? Please raise up your hands. Knowledge, insights. Okay, good, very equal. How many of you are here for the food today? we could be all honest, right? So whether you're here for the food, the people, the knowledge, let's be really equalized and chill. But if it's any one of these, you're in the right place. I want to start things off really deepening the whole notion of change. There was this statistic that I came across from McKinsey research. Have we all come to terms or are familiar with this term called S&P 500? Yeah? And I just want to audaciously ask, how many of you were born 1958 or before? 1958 or before, right? Okay, Bruce as well as a couple of gentlemen. Did you know, according to McKinsey research, 1958 Standard & Poor's 500, it's a basket of the large equity companies. The average lifespan of a company, 1958 on the S&P 500 was about 61 years, right? And what's the significance of that? In 1958, the average life expectancy is about 61 years old. Right? So meaning to say, and 61, we take the men because the men generally die before the women. Okay, it's a known thing because the men here in the room, they don't do good things. Right? More stress, depression? No, yes. I could see a lot of men here with the wrinkle as well as the stress, yeah? But what's the significance? 1958, average lifespan of the companies was 66 years old. Average life expectancy 61. Meaning to say, when we were alive back then, and if we were alive back then, we could see one company last through the time. Make sense? Yeah. I want to fast forward to all the way now. Can you make a guess what's the global average life expectancy right now? How long are people living these days? 78. What else? 81. Okay. Oh, female again, right? Female, males, Asia, yeah. So I'll just do a generous take. It's about 78 years old for men. Okay, but the alarming thing is on the Standard & Poor's 500 these days. Can you guess how long is the average lifespan of a company? 50. Nope, no sir. Nope, good guess. 8. Too low, right? 18. Okay, sorry? 20. Let's give a round of applause to this gentleman at the back. So I'll say this again, the average lifespan of a company these days, S&P 500, is 21 years. And what does that mean? Means from the start till the boom and the peak until it goes out of market, out of short, 21 years, right? Meaning in the current person who's born right now, you would see 3 big companies up and down, in and out. So I wanted to sort of get ourselves a bit more aware and sensitized of that. Now, moving into this whole social media brand kind of thing, I don't want to sort of preach to the non-preach, or I want to sort of preach to those who are already in the whole game and zone. Today, I just want to leave you with one very simple concept called buying criteria. Right? How many of you feel that you're good salespeople? Very good. Okay, we have one. Very confident, sir. I'm going to go over, right? Could you share with us a bit about yourself and why do you think you are a good salesperson?
Well, I've been in the business 20 odd years and still succeeding.
Okay. That's a mic drop moment. Let's give him a round of applause. Okay. So I want to start talking while the food is coming. Please enjoy your food here. This whole concept of a buying criteria. A lot of times, I think to really sort of cut through the whole veil of social media, I think social media is very dazzling. It will be almost a travesty for me to cover everything in about 15-20 minutes, plus with the amazing food in front of you, right? But I want to just like leave you with a food for thought, right? A lot of times, I think when I consult clients, they're telling me like questions like, Ben, you know, how much should I share? Which platforms should I go to? Should I go on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube? Should I use this and that? I think fundamentally, is if there's one good idea that I could leave you with, it's not about how we want to sell, but it's more about how our clients want to buy, right? It's not about how we want to sell, but about how our clients want to buy. So I want to give you a few little case studies and examples first, right? The first case study was of, again, one of my clients. She's the #1 leader in Prudential, a tech agency. She runs a $20 million group, and we were really hard in trenches trying to construct a brand. And she went from someone who's zero brand, zero presence, to most recently, she's a finalist in the Asia Trusted Life Insurance Life Agents Award. She's a finalist as the Insurance Leader of the Year. So what gives? I think when we sat down for her, and I would love for all of you to do this, right, is to start interviewing your clients. Now, a lot of times we think that social media is just about chasing trends. How many of you recall the 2020-2021 Dalgona coffee? Anyone recalls that? Not too much. Do you all know what's Dalgona coffee? It's a bit like a froth where it's a social media trend. Yeah, this gentleman knows it, right? Obviously from his looks, like soft, young, yeah, right? So the thing is, social media shouldn't be about chasing trends. And conversely, I think what we did for her was that we started to ask her, one, who are the people that were exactly buying her? Number two, which platforms were they using? Number three, what do they want to see from her? While this will be very, very innocuous, obvious questions, the key thing here is I like you to think of social media as really a way for people to do 3 things with you, right? Can you say 3 things? 3 things, yeah? And can you help me to read out these 3 verbs, which is see, think, and do? See, think, and do, right? And the whole goal of social media, in my very, very engineer's mind, is that we need to engineer the reality that our customers want to see from us. Does it make sense? Are you following? Right? So obviously when people go on social media, and I train thousands of agents, they all say that, Ben, I want to sell more policies, I want to recruit more people in business. That's clear? Yeah? But a lot of times, you know, that's the doing part. Social media is such that, or branding as an effect is such that people need to see first, then they think, and then they do. So if doing part is to buy a policy and to recruit people into the business, then the question is, what do you need people to think? So I want to put myself into the context of many expat advisors here. We want to, for example, attract expats to do financial planning with us. That's the do part, right? Now the think, what do we want them to think? Maybe we want them to think like, for example, the CPS scheme versus the superannuation in Australia. There's some merits, there's some challenges, there's some arbitrage to be had. Do we want them to think that maybe PR, permanent residency in Singapore, is something to be considered? Do we want them to think whereby the future is in Asia? Do we want them to think that working with a financial planner like Jarrad is much, much more a prudent choice than trying to do it all on your own, right? And if we start to ask ourselves, these are the critical questions we want people to think, then the key thing here is, what do we then have to have people to see, right? I took the liberty to check out Jarrad's social media, and if you haven't, please go check him out. He is as good and much, even more better on social media, highly active. The key thing here is he's giving people exactly what they need to see, right? So I particularly love one of his content where he talked about why he moved to Singapore, right? Why Singapore becomes a country of choice, talking about tax rates. So if there's anything I'd like to leave all of you with, because I think there's Q&A later, is this whole concept of see, think, and do. If we want people to do and do is buy business, buy plans, do planning with us, what do we want them to think? More importantly, what do they want them to think about us, our company? Right? And then to reverse engineer to what do we want people to see first. And the whole part about seeing on social media is really making sure that you're catching enough eyeballs. In rounding up, I have this little quotation that I want to share, which I took from a friend's Instagram, and it really got me thinking. So please, if you would indulge me in that, this little quote from Henry Ford. Do we all know Henry Ford? Yep. Henry Ford says that a man minus the machine is a slave, right? And a man plus the machine is a free man. right? A man minus the machine is a slave. What do I mean by that? I think if we are still doing business the way we used to do 10 years ago, 20 years ago, without learning anything from what Vivek has said, I think we are going to be slave to our business. We're going to be slave to our phones, we're going to be slave to appointments. We aren't using Calendly like what Jarrad mentioned, but if we are man with the machine, we are a free man. And hopefully, today we'll start to open up your paradigms, open up your perspective to the whole value of social, right? Because I think these days, even when we purchase anything, and I'd like you to also ask yourself, the last time you purchased something that's intangible, right? What do you do? For me, I was booking a vacation for my 17-18-month-old in the Zaru, and the key thing, everything about what Vivek said, the buying criteria, online, Expedia, peer reviews. I even went to, like, for example, TikTok, and these days, even on TikTok or in a China equivalent called Little Red Book, 小红书, people do this term called, in Chinese called 攻略, right? In English, that's basically a hack. So there's a lot of people giving answers and insights. Now, I think my hope for all of you financial advisors and me, working a lot of advisors, is really we need to up our game, right? We cannot rest on our laurels. After this dinner, there's work to do. And after this dinner, I think Bruce has a great directive for all of his team as well. But the key thing here, can we uplift and take our game to the next level? Because 10 years ago, I used to distribute business cards and collect cards. I think 10 years now, we're scanning the QR code. Now 10 years later, what's the future we're going to go into? Right? I leave you with this thought. And of course, if there's time for question and answers, I'm happy to share that more with you. But these are my humble insights, helping certain very, very prominent leaders in the space to really grow, scale, and take their brand and business to the next level. Right? With that, I'll leave you to your dinner, as well as our beautiful MC, Linda.
I'd like to introduce our very last speaker, but not saving the best for last, but also another good friend. Sorry, Robin. Also introducing another good friend of mine, Robin Lee. So Robin is Napier's head of APAC, Asia Pacific. Robin's career started in Silicon Valley before he moved to Wall Street as a hedge fund tech analyst. He then became involved in the reg tech startup space, including 7 startup launches, 2 acquisitions, multiple board roles, and authored 2 books. Prior to joining Napier, Robin held a role in market development, covering the risk business in Southeast Asia at Refinitiv, which is now LSEG. Robin holds an MBA from Santa Clara University, a degree in mathematics, computer science, and management from King's College London, and diplomas in compliance and AML with the International Compliance Association. So we know this is going to be a very fun speech. Compliance. Woo-hoo! And if you've seen Robin before, you may have recognized him on the big screen in shows such as Disrupting the Disruptors in Banking, Holistic AML, why is it so important, Battling Financial Crime in the Metaverse, Transaction Monitoring, the Next Generation. And his publications include the Reg Tech book and the Full Stack Salesperson, and a small cameo in The Wolf of Wall Street. No, sorry, I was just entertaining the tea-pack over there. Now that your expectations are high, I'd like everyone to give a warm welcome to Robin.
Oh my gosh, expectations are really high here. Alright, so I am not going to cover anything that interesting, Linda. And as you can see here, my talk today will be on navigating finance in the future, technology trends, fin crime, and reg tech. Okay, so a bit of housekeeping before we begin here, ladies and gentlemen. I really hope that today's session will involve some learning. Okay, I want to make this as interactive as possible, so if anyone has any questions throughout, then just throw your hand up and would love to address it there and then. Okay, some stuff will be confidential, right? So some of the stuff I'll be sharing will be privy to not just the organisations I've worked for, but to my personal life as well. So although Linda's already revealed a lot in that introduction there, and what I try to do with my slides, ladies and gentlemen, is if there's anything that you take away from today, it's the stuff in red. So are we good with that, ladies and gentlemen? All riggedy, right, let's get this show on the road. Okay, so in terms of what I will cover today, just give you a little bit of an introduction, although again, I think Linda covered a lot of that already. We're going to talk about technology. We're then going to talk about fintech. How many people here in the room have heard of this term, fintech? Not as many as I thought. Okay, good. The education part will kick in. Excellent. Everything okay? Oh, we can keep the music on, that's all right. I mean, I was looking for a good beat so I can get my rhyme on. I mean, we're talking about OGs earlier, right? I mean, I used to rap when I was younger, so I was going to start busting some lyrics, man. And sorry, Generation X are here trying to be a millennial Generation Z person. We'll then talk about financial crime. We'll talk about RegTech itself. So how many people here have heard of the term RegTech? Okay, not so many, so good. We'll have a bit more education here. And then we'll bring it all together and follow it up with any questions that you may have following after, okay? You good with that, ladies and gentlemen? Yes. All right. Okay, so just a little bit about myself. I was born in this country here. I spent 10 years in this country here. I've been in Singapore now for about 10 years. And my parents are from this country here. So if you're wondering why I look like Jet Li and sound like Harry Potter, that's the reason why. Okay? As Linda mentioned, I started my career in Silicon Valley. I was actually a developer. I was actually, how the government here is going on about how everyone should be doing coding, etc. So I did that job, didn't like it, moved very quickly out of that into enterprise software sales. And then switched over from that to Wall Street, as Linda mentioned, where I was an analyst in the hedge fund space, covering mainly technology companies. Okay. I then came here to Singapore, got involved in the compliance space. As soon as I was able to get my permanent residency here, launched a startup. That startup subsequently got acquired by one of the law firms here in Singapore, and within, I don't know, 8 months, and then Linda was around for that, everyone left. So clearly the culture, I love the conversations we had earlier about, the difference in how millennials think and all that good stuff here, but it's very different for the type of organization you work for as well, right? So startup culture is very different to working in a law firm, as I'm sure you can all imagine. Okay, I then got involved in the RegTech space, helped launch the RegTech scene here in Singapore with a couple of startups. And then, as Linda mentioned, I went to what was then Thomson Reuters and subsequently Refinitiv, and now known as the London Stock Exchange, where I covered the compliance and financial crime space. Okay, and then during that time, I got involved in the cryptocurrency space and helped this company here raise $35 million and using what was then called ICOs. Okay. All right. In terms of what I do today, as Linda mentioned, I'm an author. I've written a couple of books. I'm an educator, so I teach a course called Technology Psychology: How to Think Like a Technology Company and Not Like a Financial Company. Okay. If financial organizations were thinking the right way and doing the right thing, there'll be no need for the fintech space in the first place. Right? Okay, I'm also involved in an insurtech startup that you see here. Have a bit of a consulting company where I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'm also the global fintech liaison for the US Department of Justice. So the DOJ actually set up a public-private partnership that focuses on the fintech space, and so I'm the guy that brings the public sector together with the private sector, and we discuss a variety of matters, some of which will come up in later in today's presentation. I'm also the head of APAC for Napier Technologies, which is a RegTech company that specializes in combating financial crime. And so many of our customers include banks, fintechs, insurance companies, etc., etc. Okay, so let's talk about technology, and let's talk about the evolution of technology. Okay. In terms of what's been front and center, that's evolved, right? We've moved very, very quickly from the 50s and 60s, from semiconductors to hardware, to software, to internet companies, to social media. But my question to you guys in the audience here, like I said, I want to make this as interactive as possible, is what do you think is next? Any takers? Got a metaverse here. Okay, that's a good one. Web 3.0, yes, yes. I'm thinking more from an industry perspective. So I like the concept of metaverse. The reality, ladies and gentlemen, is everyone, right? I mean, if you look at Uber, Airbnb, Tesla, Netflix, even Disney to an extent, right? Disney is arguably a technology company if you look at the stuff that they've been pumping out. General Electric, IKEA is a technology company today, and McDonald's. Industry 4.0 is what we've been calling it, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Everyone has to be a technology company. You either get up or you put up, right? It's simple as that. Okay? But many of the newer technologies is fueled by data. So why is that, ladies and gentlemen? That's because the amount of data that we generate today has just increased exponentially. So I love the fact that we've mentioned all these social media companies earlier today, and check it out, ladies and gentlemen. Look at how much data is generated from each of these respective companies here. Okay? And you know what? It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. This increase is just exponentially growing and growing and growing. And so when we take a look at a lot of the newer technologies, I want to cite a couple that are of particular interest to not only myself, but to the financial industry as a whole. Okay? First is blockchain. So I've got a little definition here. You can read it all later. I'll make sure that we're able to share the slides later. But the key thing that, with respect to data, that we need to pay attention to when it comes to blockchain is that you need accurate data. Okay? Once that data is sitting there on the chain, it can't be erased, right? Unless you're Accenture and you try to come up with something cool like an erasable blockchain like they did a couple of years ago, but that didn't pan out that well. Okay? I've got a couple I like this diagram here, which shows the properties of what we call distributed ledger technology or blockchain technology here. Okay? It's programmable, secure, anonymous to a degree, unanimous, time-stamped, immutable, and distributed. Okay? When people ask me, Robin, what's a blockchain? Especially in crowds like this, the best example I can think of is today, Robin Lee is single, tomorrow he's married, and that gets, everyone in the room gets updated simultaneously. You're all what we call nodes in that chain, and those updates go through, which means that you not only know that Robin Lee is married, but that information gets stored in your brains simultaneously. Okay, it's a network, a distributed network. Okay, that's the key word here. Okay, artificial intelligence. How many people here have been hearing about AI or been fascinated with AI and what have you? So Jarrad, just a quick one, right? How would you define AI? Don't look at the answers here.
How would I define it? I guess just ongoing learning.
Ongoing learning. Okay, so basically what I've done here is I've got 3 definitions that I've selected. Like I've got an official definition, went to Wikipedia, okay, very millennial thing to do. A computer science one, a colloquial one, and this is the Robin Lee one here, just trying to keep it simple for everyone, okay? Defining AI. AI is not just AI, okay? It's actually a bunch of different algorithmic techniques that you see here, so it encompasses a lot of things. Some of this stuff you would have heard of, some of this you would not have heard of, okay? But the key front and center focus on AI today are these ones here, okay? So within artificial intelligence, you have machine learning, which is basically where you feed an algorithm data, the algorithm learns something and then spits it out, but you're controlling what is coming out and what is being put in. And then you have deep learning, which is where you just put the information in, sit back, and let it draw up whatever it wants and spit out whatever it wants. Okay? again, if you have a look here, this slide really shows how the intersection between data science, i.e. big data, and artificial intelligence, and where it is today. And I thought what I would do here is really break it down in layman's terms in terms of what it is, right? So I take a little bit of data, I put it into the algorithm. Anyone who's done a little bit of programming will recognize this, right? If statements, if then loop, right? And so you put the data in, it learns something, spits out an output, loops it back, you put the next bit of data in, it gets a little bit smarter, okay, then loops back, spits out a slightly more intelligent answer, and then loops back. And then you just keep doing this over and over and over. And you saw that slide earlier when I showed how much data is being generated, right? So the more data that you put into this, the smarter it becomes, okay? Does that make sense, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, riggedy right. Okay, and so in geek talk here, Silicon Valley guy here, right? It's called long short-term memory. Okay? All right, let's talk about the fintech scene. Okay, I've got a definition here for you all to see. Okay, remember, pay attention to the stuff in red. Okay, describe the new tech that seeks to improve and automate the delivery and use of financial services. Okay, and we have some examples of some applications here. Okay, how many people here are actually interested in cryptocurrencies or get involved in cryptocurrencies? All right, about a quarter of the room here. Okay. Then what we have here is payments. Okay, so I remember when I first arrived in Singapore, for me to transfer money from my Standard Chartered account to my OCBC account, it used to take 3 days. Oh yeah, someone had it, yeah. Now it's immediate, and that's because of payment technology that's come in, right, and made it faster, more efficient, etc., etc. If you look at companies like TransferWise, you can do that internationally now. Okay? This one is probably of interest to you guys a lot because it's kind of like your competition, right? Robo-investing. How many people here are actually worried about robo-investing and taking away your jobs? I'm just curious to, or see it as some sort of a threat. All right, humans in the building, I love it. You know, when I think of that, right, I'll just share an aside story here and I'm really showing my age here. I remember this show that I used to watch as a kid called Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Has anyone heard about this? Yes. All right, I'm really showing my age here. Okay, so for those of you who aren't aware, right, Buck Rogers in the 25th century was about this 20th century astronaut. He goes up into space, okay, and he's an astronaut, right? So he goes up on some space mission, gets caught up in some black hole, and arrives back on Earth in the 25th century. Okay, and at the time, I don't know, this is the pilot episode, right? Earth was at war with some alien race, the usual stuff. It was the early 80s, so late 70s, so everyone was trying to rip off Star Wars at the time and whatever, right? And literally within the first, the guy lands on Earth, he meets a couple of robots, a couple of scantily clad women. Again, this was the late 70s, right? And then he finds out that Earth is at war with these aliens, and suddenly, within half an hour, the aliens attack the Earth. And so everyone gets into this equivalent of the X-Wing, this little spaceships like X-Wings in Star Wars, right? And so Buck Rogers is like, hey, I've just arrived here from 500 years ago or whatever it is, but I'm going to get in one anyway and fly and defend the Earth from these aliens. And everyone is on autopilot. Okay, and they're losing. The aliens are beating the humans, and then Buck Rogers is like, "Oh, there's a manual button. Let me just switch it to manual," and he takes out the fleet one time. Human intuition, right, ladies and gentlemen. So that's probably how I see you guys versus those robo investors. Anyway, NFTs and of course the metaverse, as Jarrad mentioned earlier. Yes. Tax advice. Okay. Right. Do you think he'll get there?
Okay. I'm new to this industry, so I enter as a student and learn from everyone here in the room on that front. Okay, so let's talk about financial crime. Okay, so there's a lot of bad that's going on around the world today. Okay, everything from drugs and the proceeds from drugs to assassinations, human trafficking, that's a significant one, terrorism. Okay, but there's a lot of newer crimes that get recognized as financial crimes today, and that includes cybersecurity, okay, like hacking and what have you, wildlife trafficking. Anyone here familiar with wildlife trafficking? Stuff that goes on in Africa and stuff, right? Or even closer to home in Indonesia, right? It's pretty horrible stuff, right? Fishery crime, okay. Logging, okay. And so when I take a look at this here, right, I've deliberately put terrorism as in a different color, and the reason for this is due to these definitions here, okay. So look, again, I've got some official definitions here, but essentially money laundering is taking dirty money, putting it into the financial system and cleaning it up, okay. Whereas terrorism is actually the opposite. Right, we're taking clean money and using it to do dirty stuff. Okay, it's something that we all have to be cognizant of, because we're all in the financial industry, right? And so my question to everyone here is who is responsible for addressing this? Everyone, yes. Thank you, Jarrad. Thank you. That's the spirit, my friend. And so if we look at the challenges today, right, we see that 1.5 trillion is paid out by businesses in bribes each year. Another 1.1 trillion of illicit funds flow from developed countries every year. We still have 40 million human slaves, okay, modern day slaves, and we're only capturing less than 1% of that dirty money right now. Okay, this is horrible stuff. And this is an interesting one here. And again, I don't fall into this category because I'm a little bit older than everyone here, but 2 out of 3 millennials only want to work for an organization that has a positive impact on the world. So that really speaks to what we've heard earlier today. Okay, so some examples of some financial crime methodologies. Anyone recognize this? Smurf, yes. Anyone here who doesn't know what a Smurf is? Okay. You sure? You sure they're valid? Nah. Okay. So the reason why this term is called smurfing is because Smurfs was a cartoon from the 70s, 80s. We had these little blue guys that were going around on different adventures and whatnot. In a financial crime context, we're talking about taking large amounts of money, splitting it up into smaller amounts, and then getting it into the financial system. Okay? So an example of that is, in Singapore, if you do a transaction over $10,000, that's got to get flagged, right? And so if you see someone that's putting in, 9,900 one day, then 9,000 the next day, then 9,500 the day after, that's an example of smurfing, okay? Another one here is what we call ultimate beneficial ownership. Now, I know you're all, involved in the financial advisory side, et cetera, but how many people here deal with companies specifically? Can I get a show of hands? Does anyone have to advise someone who has some sort of ownership in a company? No? Oh, okay. Okay, well, just as from an educational perspective, okay? Well, right. Got it. So ultimate beneficial ownership is basically if a company is owned by another company, that's owned by another company, and the directors or shareholders of that company has some sort of risk associated with it. They might be politically exposed, they might be terrorists or alleged terrorists, right? They might be money launderers, etc. They hold some sort of risk, and you just have to be cognizant of that, okay? And then the last but not least is this concept of trade-based money laundering. So this is I highly doubt this will involve you guys, but I just think it's interesting, right? When you see, ships freighters and ships and all that stuff, the trade that happens, right? People are under-declaring or over-declaring the amount of goods they have and laundering money that way. Okay, criminal application. So you saw this slide earlier, right? And despite the fact that these are newer technologies and the developments and the whole fintech space and all that, criminals still take advantage of this stuff. Because whenever there's anything new, there are loopholes. And it's just the human psyche for us to explore that stuff and try and take advantage of it. Okay? So on the crypto side, has anybody heard of privacy coins? No? Oh, okay, we have a gentleman over here. Okay. Did you want to give us a rundown of what that is, sir? Monero, yes. So privacy coins, ladies and gentlemen, are cryptocurrencies where you can hide the sender, the recipient, and the amount being transferred. Okay? And how do they hide it? They stick a layer of encryption over that's so hardcore, and in the case of not Monero, but Zcash, it's like MIT students that have come up with this layer of encryption, so it's really, really tough to break. These are brilliant people, okay? And it's a risk, right? So some of the work that I've done with the US Department of Justice, we've seen entire terrorist networks that are run off Monero. Okay, it's crazy. All right, atomic swaps and mixers, okay? So again, I'll share the slides and you can Google all this later, but this is these are ways that people are hiding money, laundering money, etc., etc. Okay? With payments, I mentioned what smurfing is earlier, hacks, fraud, and that stuff there. Similar with the robo-advisors. NFTs, right? We've seen some serious hacks happen as of late. And then some fraudulent stuff happened there. And then this one's the most interesting one for me, and that's this concept of the metaverse. Okay? Does anyone here heard of the metaverse or know what it is or want to share? Okay. Let's go over to my man here.
Metaverse is just a place where you have an avatar and you interact with people even though you are located very far away.
That's correct. Yes. It's a virtual world essentially, ladies and gentlemen. But it could be mixed reality, virtual reality, etc. But it's a virtual world. And what I think is interesting about this is that as time goes on, so forget millennials, forget Generation Z, I think where the puck is heading is that people would rather spend time in the virtual world than the real world. Okay? Especially as the technology becomes better and things become more realistic. The best example I can think of, sorry, I'll get to there in a minute, sir. The best example I can think of is, how many people here remember the movie Avatar? How many people here remember when it came out? Okay. There were hundreds of thousands of cases globally of people that were diagnosed with depression because they would rather live in that virtual world with the upside down mountains and the blue people than the real world. It was so real, especially if you saw it in 3D, right? The Matrix is another example, and Ready Player One, and all these other movies, right? That's becoming more and more realistic, ladies and gentlemen. I have an Oculus Rift, right? Not Rift, whatever it's called, the latest Oculus, right? Oculus 2. And I can sit down with my friend in New York, interact across the table just like this, and do work together. There's a whiteboard feature and everything like that. And what's interesting about these metaverses is that you have centralized metaverses and decentralized metaverses. Okay, so that example I gave earlier about decentralized metaverses, with centralized metaverses, it's pretty straightforward. I mentioned Facebook and Oculus, right? If anything goes wrong in that metaverse, I can go to the US, which is where Facebook is headquartered, and I can take them to task for anything that goes wrong there, right? But these decentralized metaverses have no headquarters, right? So how do you prosecute that? Some of these metaverses are trying to take it to the next level where they want to become sovereign states. Sure, no problem. So I kill an elephant, I take its ivory, I sell the ivory, take the money from that and take it to the metaverse and exchange it with someone there, because a lot of these metaverses have their own currencies, cryptocurrencies, or even their own individual centralized currencies. Okay, and so the challenge that we have is, let's say that there are 3 metaverses that I'm involved with, right? There's Metaverse 1, where my job has gone to the metaverse, which is a very realistic future, right? And in that Metaverse 1, I'm known as Robin Lee, and everything's legit, and my work colleagues are there, etc., etc. We all interact just across the table, like I mentioned earlier with Jarrad, right? And then in Metaverse 2, I'm Mickey Mouse, right? And it's a social metaverse, right? And I hang out with my friends in that metaverse, but that also has its own currency as well. And then in Metaverse 3 is what we call a play-to-earn metaverse, right? Where every time I work out with all this equipment, I get money for it, that the cryptocurrency or the currency that metaverse produces. I've got a problem, right? Law enforcement has a problem. You guys will have a problem from a KYC perspective, because how do I know? And in that 3rd metaverse, by the way, I'm Donald Duck, right? So how do I know that Robin Lee is the same person as Mickey Mouse and as Donald Duck? That's a KYC challenge, right? Simultaneously, what about the inter-metaverse transactions? That's tough, right, to track all of that. And even crazier still, the cross-metaverse transactions. How do I track those, right? So a lot of shady dealings can happen on that front, and we just need to be cognizant of that. Yes, sir?
So what are advantages of having a metaverse actually?
What?
What are advantages you have this investment in metaverse? Facebook is investing $1 billion to build up a system.
Okay, so
What I'm getting from you is that for us to understand like KYC, we can be fooled around with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I just want to know from you, what advantages an advisor can have from metaverse.
You could do your advisory as Mickey Mouse in that metaverse. Seriously, I wouldn't be surprised if it's happening now. Yes and no, it depends, right? Because again, this is new. This is the wild, wild west, and the regulators haven't caught up to this yet.
So what is the future of financial advice? For decades, financial advisors have pretty much been doing things pretty much the same way, where they have a couple of client reviews every year and they focus on accumulation. The next few years, however, we will see a shift in trends that promises to reshape the ways that successful advisors need to think and stay ahead. Technological trends and technology that enables us to do things better and faster and smarter will continue to change and advance. But not only that, we must be aware that the risks of what new technology can also provide. A change in client demographics, as we do with different needs of an aging population, and simultaneously the needs of the oldest millennials who are about to turn 40 years old. Who here feels really old now? Millennials are almost turning 40, Lord. And now they are reaching out to financial advisors and needing sound financial advice. And then we also have the regulatory changes in financial services, which will make things more complex and time-consuming as we have to deal with compliance and law and everything with that in financial services. So there's a lot of considerations that financial advisors need to take heed of as we consider the future of financial advice.
GFC is obviously a financial advisory business, and as the industry is growing, therefore they need more financial planners in the industry, and we're able to provide that.
We don't only advise clients, we try to build a long-term relationship with the clients.
I learned everything from GFC in terms of the working ethics, advising the clients, meeting the clients, which boosts my confidence.
I think a type of person that will succeed here is one that is open,
easygoing,
driven, ambitious.
He was resilient.
You need to be very hard working.
Adaptable.
Be independent.
Dynamic and fun.